So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time. Now the thing is that we are covering 2nd and 3rd September's current affairs today. So we'll be covering 2 days current affairs. But the lucky part is that yesterday's current affairs were not that significant. Basically what I'm trying to say is not many news items were of significance for us civil services aspirants as far as yesterday's newspapers are concerned. Okay, so we have combined 2 days for current affairs. So today we'll be covering 2nd and 3rd September's current affairs. Alright, so yeah, that's what I wanted to communicate to you guys. So let's straight away jump into the lecture. Alright, but first, like we do always, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Alright, so let's begin. So daily current affairs 2nd to 3rd September 2025, and here is the topics list. Number 1 on this list would be issues with health insurance. There was this article in the Hindu newspaper which talked about problems with respect to health coverage in India and how health insurance schemes of Government of India as well as state governments are inadequate in providing universal health coverage. So we will investigate this entire issue. Okay. Then we'll talk about digital yen. As you all know, well, cryptocurrency is on the rise, especially after the election of Donald Trump. And many countries are releasing their own cryptocurrencies. Okay. Generally, private cryptocurrencies are available in the market, but countries are now releasing their official cryptocurrencies. And now Japan has also entered the fray. Clear? India entered this entire ecosystem long back in 2022. So we'll talk about Indian cryptocurrency as well as this digital yen of Japan. Alright. Then third news item is with respect to a Supreme Court judgment. Okay. Right to education exemption to minority schools. In 2014, minority schools, okay, schools run by minority institutions were exempt from the provisions of Right to Education Act. So we will talk about this exemption, its criticism, okay, criticism of the Supreme Court judgment and Right to Education Act itself. Alright, so this is the third news item. And then we'll talk about gender imbalance in Supreme Court. Again, an article in the Supreme Court which talks about gender imbalance in Supreme Court. Supreme Court has 34 judges. And there is just one woman judge in this group of 34 judges. So there is clear gender imbalance in Supreme Court. So we'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about India's first indigenously developed semiconductor chip. Though we will not discuss much about this fifth news item, okay, because most of it is trivia, okay, basic information. So you shall learn about that basic information from your notes. Okay, so we won't spend that much time. But nonetheless, I'll introduce this idea to you. Clear? So yes, these are the 5 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is issues with health insurance in India. Now you see, even before India got independence, okay, our freedom fighters envisioned this for India, that Indian government will provide universal health coverage. Now, what do you mean by universal health coverage? Focus on the word universal. Universal means to all. Health shall be provided to all and no one shall be denied basic health services due to lack of affordability. Okay, due to lack of money. Well, no one shall be denied basic health care. That's what we mean by universal health coverage. Now, more than 75 years have passed since our independence, okay? But still, we are far from achieving this goal of universal health coverage. Despite the fact that we have launched various health insurance schemes, okay, like PM Jan Arogya Yojana. Then various state governments have launched health insurance schemes for the poor people so that health facilities are available, health services are available to the poor of our country. Yet we are still far away from this dream of universal health coverage. Okay, so we will talk about universal health coverage. We will talk about these insurance schemes and what problems these insurance schemes face. Okay, basically we'll talk about the entire ecosystem of health coverage in India. Clear? Make sense? So let's straight away dive into this topic. So issues with healthcare. Okay, first of all, let's take a look at what was in the news, in the article basically. So the minimal definition of universal healthcare is that quality healthcare should be guaranteed to all members of the community. And who are the members of Indian community? Indian citizens. So quality healthcare should be guaranteed to all citizens irrespective of their ability to pay. That's what we mean by the term universal. Okay? Now this definition was given in 1946 by Bhore Committee. Okay? Remember I told you that Indian freedom fighters and policymakers envisioned this dream of universal healthcare for India. In fact, Bhore Committee was constituted for that purpose, and Bhore Committee basically defined the term universal healthcare. So remember this term, Bhore Committee, remember this committee, and remember that it talked about universal health coverage. Clear? But the irony is that we defined and we basically, well, it was a clear-cut vision. We had this vision even before our independence. But the irony is that 8 decades, almost 80 years have passed, yet we are far from this dream. Despite the fact that PM Jan Arogya Yojana, Government of India's insurance scheme for the poor, state health insurance schemes, they are operational, okay, and they have basically they provide coverage to record number of underprivileged people. Yet we are far from this dream of UHC, right? So surely these insurance schemes are suffering from problems, right? Now basically let me tell you that PM Jan Arogya Yojana covers around 58 crore beneficiaries. Most of these beneficiaries are poor people. So poor people of India have basic health insurance through PMJAY. So PMJAY is basically a health insurance scheme for poor people. So it covers nearly 58 crore beneficiaries. And what services are provided to them? Well, households, poor households are given 5 lakh worth rupees 5 lakh of health coverage. So if anyone in your family, in this household is suffering from a disease and is hospitalized, well, they don't have to spend money up to 5 lakh. 5 lakh is covered every year. Clear? So this is PMJAY health insurance scheme. Now this scheme is from Government of India, right? Similarly, state governments have also launched their own health insurance schemes on similar lines to PMJAY. So both central government and state governments are spending a lot of money covering poor people of India. Yet universal health coverage is still a distant dream. Surely these schemes are suffering from problems. So what problems are they suffering from? Let's talk about that. So first of all, the thing is that PMJAY or other state insurance schemes, they incentivize for-profit healthcare. How? Well, now the hospitals, basically the thing is that under PMJAY, you can even go to private hospitals for your checkup. Okay? Now the thing is that private hospitals know that these customers or these people, these patients are not paying from their own pocket. Health insurance or Government of India's health insurance would basically pay for that. Therefore, they follow unethical practices. Okay, they follow unethical practices like overcharging, okay, overbilling, unnecessary procedures are built into. These problems are there because this entire insurance scheme incentivizes private hospitals. Okay, so this is one problem. Then, a lot of government's money is being spent on PMJAY. Now, PMJAY basically spends more money on private hospitals. Two-third budget of PMJAY is spent on private hospitals. Very little money is left for primary healthcare. So basically, through this scheme, you are incentivizing hospitals. But normal primary healthcare centers, community centers, which provide basic services, vaccination and all in villages, they are neglected. So rural health suffers, right? Neglect of primary health care. Then there is lack of awareness among people also. Many people in India are illiterate and they find the entire process of claim settlement tedious and difficult. Most of them are also not aware also, and because of lack of awareness, sometimes hospitals also fool them. Okay, that is why, well, many people are covered, but very few of them claim their insurance, because the entire process of insurance claims is difficult for them. Okay, so there is issue with respect to claim settlement. Clear? Then, very big issue, financial sustainability of the model. Look, many private hospitals are unhappy with the government. Why? Because, well, they provide these health services to poor people and that money is then reimbursed from the government. But there are delays in government reimbursement or payments. Okay? So much so that more than 600 hospitals, private hospitals, have opted out of PMJAY. They are saying that the delays are so much that it has become financially unviable for us. So this entire thing is financially not sustainable. Plus, National Health Authority of India has reported that around 3,000 hospitals were conducting frauds like usage of ghost patients, overbilling, overcharging. So fraud is being committed to defraud government resources. Right? So this is the problem. These are the problems and many more like them. Now, the thing is that despite these problems, the government thought that still we'll be able to cover everyone in India. But we are far away from universal health coverage. So let's talk about universal health coverage, okay? So what are the issues with universal health coverage? Okay, why India is away from universal health coverage? First of all, when we talk of public expenditure on health, now the word public means government. Private people also spend on health, but public expenditure, government expenditure on health in India is 1.3% of GDP. That's very low as compared to global average. Global average is 6.1%. So we already spend very little on health. Clear? This is problem number one. That's why we are not close to UHC. Then, despite these insurance schemes, many patients in India still have to pay from their own pocket. So there is high out-of-pocket expenditure. Still, it is persisting. Then, we have discussed this. Insurance incentivizes private hospitals and neglects primary and preventive health care. Okay? We need to invest a lot on preventive health care. Okay? If you can prevent a disease, then you don't have to hospitalize also. You will save money on hospitalization. But government has focused all of its manpower and resources on this health insurance, neglecting preventive healthcare infrastructure and primary healthcare centers in rural areas, in every village. This is a problem. Plus, the insurance companies are poorly regulated. That's why there are cases of these frauds. So this is a problem. Clear? So what's the way forward? Okay, what is the way forward? Well, simple. We have discussed these problems. Well, the opposite of these problems, these issues, is the way forward. Increase public expenditure. Okay, generate more awareness with respect to health insurance so that people know how to settle claims. Then, well, invest more on primary and preventive healthcare, regulate the sector properly, reimburse private hospitals on time. All these things are way forward. Clear? Simple? So yeah, that's about it. Now let's talk about digital yen. Okay? The thing is that cryptocurrency is on the rise. Okay? Private cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are on the rise. Many people are opting for them. Now the thing is, many countries are threatened by the rise of these private cryptocurrencies. Because you see, I'll give you an example. RBI feels threatened by Bitcoin. Why? Currently, RBI is the only authority for money in India. RBI is the only authority that issues rupees in India. Through that, RBI controls rupees in India. RBI controls money supply in India. Whenever it wants to increase money supply, it will increase the production of rupees. Whenever it wants to decrease money supply, it can do so. Through its monetary policy, RBI controls money supply in India, right? But if people in India start cryptocurrencies, start using cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and all, then people in India would neglect usage of rupees. There would be extra money in the economy, and RBI would lose control over money supply in India, right? And this is a threat, because then other private players would control India's money supply. This is a threat. And it's not just RBI. Many countries face that, feel that. Okay? So for long, RBI has been blocking and openly criticizing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But of late, RBI realized, and many central banks of all over the world, they realized that no matter how much you criticize cryptocurrencies, they are still on the rise. Therefore, if you still want to retain some control over your country's money supply, you have to launch your own cryptocurrency. So RBI decided to do that in 2022 by launching its own cryptocurrency called CBDC. We'll discuss about that. Now, many countries are following suit, and now Japan has also entered the fray by launching its own Japanese yen. Okay? Digital yen. So we'll talk about this, and we'll also talk about India's cryptocurrency called CBDC. Clear? So let's discuss this. So digital yen. Now, like all cryptocurrencies, digital yen and CBDC, they are all based on blockchain technology. Now, I know some of you are asking an explanatory video on blockchain technology soon. Very soon I'll come up with that. Okay. For now, just remember this term blockchain. Okay. I'll explain what blockchain is later. So all cryptocurrencies are based on blockchain technology. Similarly, digital yen is also based on blockchain technology. Now, a few facts about digital yen. Okay. That's all you need to know. These facts only. Focus more on India's cryptocurrency rather than Japanese cryptocurrency. Okay. Now, about digital yen. So it is also called DCJPY. DC because its developer is called D Current. DC, and JPY stands for Japanese yen. It will be a blockchain based deposit currency fully backed by 1:1 fiat yen. That means 1 digital yen will be equal to 1 yen. Okay. So exchange rate between yen and digital yen is sealed. Clear? Unlike stable coins, there are these private cryptocurrencies called, like Bitcoin, there is a stable coin which is $1 is equal to 1 stable coin. But nonetheless, unlike stable coins are private. Okay. These would be government, digital yen. Then it will be developed by Japanese Post Bank and D Current DCP. Under this, customers can convert their yen deposits. So all the Japanese customers who have deposits in Japan Post Bank, they can convert their deposits into these tokens called DCJPY tokens, basically digital yen, and use it for transactions. Okay, what is the purpose? Enable instant, transparent and convenient digital transactions for depositors, use of blockchain technology for ensuring traceability and transparency. Clear? Now let's talk about India's cryptocurrency, and that is CBDC. CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. Okay, CBDC, also known as digital rupee. The best part about CBDC is that it is a government cryptocurrency. Unlike others like Bitcoin, Ethereum and all, they are private cryptocurrencies. That is why it shall be issued by RBI, and RBI calls it a legal tender. Legal tender means the official currency of India. Clear? Now, currently it is undergoing testing phase. Basically, it is released as a pilot project. Government wants to study its implementation. RBI has released it in some areas, in some locations only. and in some financial institutions only. After proper study, then we'll launch it like throughout India. Clear? Now this CBDC that has been launched in two parts. Okay, two types of CBDCs are there. Wholesale CBDC, retail CBDC. Wholesale CBDC shall be used by banks and financial institutions. You see, banks and financial institutions require money for buying bonds, government bonds, various other types of bonds, debentures. So for these big transactions, well, there is wholesale CBDC. Only banks can use it or financial institutions can use it. Then there is retail CBDC for people like you and me for payments and all. Okay, so wholesale CBDC is for these big financial institutions. Retail CBDCs is for people like you and me for payments. Clear? Now, what are the benefits of this? Financial inclusion. Okay, you don't need a bank account now. You can just buy CBDC and use it for transactions. Reduced transaction cost. Earlier, when you had to transfer money, it had some cost attached to it, which the banks used to pay. Now with CBDC, instant payment would occur without any cost. Plus, cross-border transactions would also become simple. Today, cross-border transactions are difficult. Okay, through CBDC that would be possible. Then effective monetary policy. Why? Because cryptocurrency would exist in India, but not private. Indian RBI cryptocurrency. So RBI has full control over its money supply. So these are the benefits. What are the disadvantages? First of all, there are privacy concerns, because if you are using CBDC, well, government can track your payments and purchases and transactions. So there are some privacy concerns and government tracking fears. Then, if all of this is online, well, then there are some very talented hackers who can hack the system. So there are cybersecurity concerns. Then you require massive digital infrastructure, data centers for making this CBDC operational. This is a requirement. Plus, if you have CBDC, there is no requirement for banks. Currently, we use banks for payments. But if you have CBDC for instant transaction, you don't require banks. So traditional banks would face a lot of losses if everyone in India uses CBDC. So we have to think something for them. Okay, so these are the challenges. Clear? Though in your notes, more detail is mentioned, which will be easily comprehensible. I mean, you can easily understand all of that. So do read the notes also. All right. Now let's move on to third news item, which is RTE exemption in two minority schools. Now listen to me carefully. The thing is that, well, there is a fundamental right in our constitution, that is Article 21A. Article 21A guarantees right to free and compulsory education to all children between the age of 6 to 14. So all children in India between the age of 6 to 14 have the right of free, that's important, and compulsory education. Clear? That is enshrined in Article 21A of the Constitution. Now, to implement Article 21A of the Constitution, Parliament passed Right to Education Act. Under that Right to Education Act, all schools in India, government schools, private schools, all types of schools in India had to follow certain rules and regulations. Clear? But in 2014, well, Supreme Court of India exempted minority schools from following the provisions of Right to Education Act. They exempted minority schools. Minority schools need not follow any of the provisions of Right to Education Act. We'll talk about those provisions also. Clear? Now, recently in 2025, a two-judge Supreme Court bench has criticized that previous Supreme Court judgment. On what grounds? We shall discuss. All right, so let's talk about this. So, Right to Education Act exemption to minority schools. So, what was in the news? Listen to me carefully, okay? In 2014, the Supreme Court's Constitution Bench. Now, what is a Constitution Bench? A bench of 5 judges. If there is any case with respect to Constitution of India, that will only be heard by a constitution bench in Supreme Court, and that bench will not have less than 5 members. Remember this fact. A constitution bench shall always have 5 or more judges. Clear? So this judgment in 2014 was delivered by a constitution bench of 5 judges known as the Pramati Educational and Cultural Trust versus Union of India. Under this judgment, minority schools were exempt from Right to Education Act. Okay? Now, to understand the significance of this 2014 judgment, you need to know what are the provisions of Right to Education Act, right? So let's talk about Right to Education Act. Okay? So Rights of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act operationalizes Article 21A of the Constitution, the fundamental right, guaranteeing free compulsory education to children between 6 to 14 years of age, right? Now, what are the requirements? All government schools to provide free education to all enrolled children. Aided schools, which are aided by government provides them with some funds. Government doesn't own those schools, but they provide them with financial aid. Aided schools to provide free seats proportionate to the aid they receive. Okay? Private schools who do not receive any money from the government, they also have to reserve 25% of the seats for underprivileged children, and they won't charge any fees. The government will reimburse for that fees. Okay, but 25% seats are to be reserved for underprivileged children in private schools also. Plus, there are various provisions, various requirements with respect to pupil-teacher ratio, student-teacher ratio, teacher eligibility, infrastructure, banning punishment, corporal punishment. Teachers used to punish really harshly. Physical beatings and all used to exist back in the day. That was banned. Cap on fees that can be charged. All of these are provisions of Right to Education Act. Now, minority schools are exempt from this. They don't have to follow anything. Neither 25% reservation, neither these pupil-teacher ratio, teacher eligibility, infrastructure, nothing. Clear? Now, under Right to Education Act, okay, listen to me carefully. Religious schools were already exempt. Right to Education Act says that religious schools won't be covered under this. Now, religious schools can be madrasas, Muslim madrasas, Hindu Vedic schools, all these are not covered under this. But Right to Education Act never exempted minority schools. But Right to Education Act said that, look, there are these two articles called Article 29 and Article 30 of our Constitution. Specifically, Article 30 of our Constitution. It basically provides minority institutions to manage their educational institutions on their own. So, minority educational institutions have certain freedoms guaranteed under Article 30 of the Constitution. So, Right to Education Act said that though we are not clearly saying that minority schools are exempt from RTE, but yes, the implementation of this act will respect the provisions or the rights guaranteed under Article 30. Clear? That was mentioned in Right to Education Act. But Supreme Court in 2014 interpreted this as minority schools being exempt. Okay? Now, the thing is, what is the criticism? Well, as soon as this judgment was delivered, many private schools started started filing applications for getting minority status because they wanted to be free from this 25% reservation. So many Catholic schools, many schools run by Catholic organizations, convent schools basically, they started going for that. Okay. Plus, well, the thing is that RTE has certain good provisions with respect to infrastructure, pupil-student ratio. Minority schools would be exempt from that. Don't you think the quality of education would decline? It can happen. So this judgment was criticized. But recently in 2025, a 2-judge bench of the Supreme Court criticized this 2014 judgment. The thing is, this 2-judge bench of the Supreme Court cannot overturn the previous Supreme Court decision. Okay? Because the previous Supreme Court decision was given by a 5-judge bench. If you want to overturn a decision by a 5-judge bench, you need to form a larger bench. Only a 7-judge bench or any bench which has more than 5 judges can overturn this previous judgment. Okay? So this 2-judge bench has just criticized, it can't overturn it. Let's see what happens in the future. Alright? And now let's move on to our last news item, and that is gender imbalance in Supreme Court. You see, the sanctioned strength of Supreme Court is 34 judges. Out of those 34 judges, only 1 judge is female. There is a clear gender imbalance in our higher judiciary. And an article was published in the Hindu newspaper with respect to that. Okay? Now, what are the causes behind this gender imbalance, and what are the consequences? Why this gender imbalance is bad for the country? We'll discuss all these things. Clear? Okay. So, gender imbalance in Supreme Court. Okay. So, what is the current situation? Justice B.V. Nagaratna is the sole woman judge out of the full strength of 34 judges in court. Okay. But it's not just that. Well, since 1950, only 11 women judges have been appointed to Supreme Court so far, out of 287. So out of 287 judges appointed so far in India's history, independent India's history, only 11, 3.8% were women. Plus, there is another problem. Women, you all know that judges retire at the age of 65. Women are appointed to the Supreme Court very late in their career. And that is why they have a very short tenure. Some women are appointed at the age of 62, 63, so they have only 2-3 year tenure. That is a problem. Okay? This is the current situation. Plus, let me also tell you, this is also a fact that you should remember. The first woman judge in India was Justice Fatima Bibi in 1989, as late as 1989. So this is the current situation. Now, why is that? Why is this stark gender imbalance? Well, there are various reasons behind this. Okay. Number one, well, Supreme Court judges are appointed by a collegium system. We'll study about collegium system in our polity lectures. Now, this collegium system basically contains judges only. Most of these judges are males. Plus, this collegium system lacks transparency also. Okay. Plus, there is no criteria which ensures that these many judges have to be women, these many judges have to be from this caste. There is no criteria. Collegium judges are free to choose whoever they want. So there is this problem. Then there are societal issues as well. Very few women in India choose legal career or aspire to become judges. So there are societal issues as well. Then, like I said, women are elevated to judicial services or judiciary very late. That's why their tenure shortens. Then very few women senior advocates are elevated to Supreme Court. Okay, first of all, very few women senior advocates exist. Then there is transparency issues in the collegium system. So these are the problems. Now the question is, what are the consequences of this? Okay, why is this bad for India? Okay, impact. First of all, if all judges in Supreme Court would be males, well, they would have a chauvinistic worldview or male-oriented worldview. We need diverse opinions in our judiciary. Females have a different worldview also, which can be useful in different judgments that are given, because some judgments are related to women, right? So lack of diverse perspectives in judgments. Then the legitimacy of judiciary is under question, because if your judiciary is representative of all sections of society, it will have more legitimacy. But how can that be possible if 50% of your population is not represented in higher judiciary? So there is legitimacy issue. Plus, like I said, there is lack of diverse perspectives. So only male-oriented worldviews exist. So narrow interpretation of different questions related to law. Then violation of spirit of Constitution. Article 14 guarantees right to equality. This doesn't seem like following spirit of our Constitution, especially spirit of Article 14. Plus, this would basically, if there is any female out there who wants to pursue a legal career, there are not many role models for her because there are not many female judges. So this curbs female ambitions also, which is not good for gender empowerment in our country. Clear? So this is the issue. That's about it. Now our last topic is with respect to Vikram 32-bit processor or semiconductor chip. This is India's first semiconductor chip that has been manufactured under Semicon India program or India Semiconductor Mission. Now we have discussed India Semiconductor Mission in our previous lectures. Okay, we have discussed Semicon India in our previous lectures, so I won't spend time discussing that. All right. Yes, there is some information, some factual information related to Vikram 32-bit semiconductor chip in your notes. Just go through that. That's about it. We won't waste time in discussing it because there is not much to discuss. There are a few facts that you have to just remember. Just remember those from the notes. Clear? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series, number one. And number two, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. Please do not forget to do that because it is only through that you can remember these current affairs for longer periods of time. On that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.